could I be where I am today if I were lazy and if I were a boozer?
That's the way they wanted me, and I couldn't change even if I tried. Those quiet, almost resigned words from Dean Martin would come to carry a weight no one expected, especially when they were tied to a truth about John Wayne that few ever saw coming. On December 25, 1995, inside his Beverly Hills home, Dean Martin lay in silence, his once powerful voice reduced to a fragile whisper. This was a man who had spent decades captivating audiences, his smooth baritone echoing through concert halls, his effortless charm lighting up television screens. He made heartbreak seem poetic and indulgence look like an art form. For years, he was the definition of cool, untouchable, unbothered, always in control. But on that quiet Christmas morning, something changed. As the end of his life approached, Dean chose to speak, not to the world, not to the press, but to his daughter, Dina.
I got a 60-year-old saddle that looks better than you do.
What he revealed in those final hours wasn't just a memory. It was something he had carried in silence for decades. Something heavy, something unresolved. And it would challenge everything people believed about one of Hollywood's most iconic friendships. For nearly 50 years, the public saw Dean Martin and John Wayne as more than friends. They were symbols, two towering figures of American culture. Dean, the smooth crooner who moved through life with ease and wit. Wayne, the Duke, the embodiment of rugged strength and Western heroism. Together, they seemed like the perfect contrast, yet completely inseparable. They worked together, laughed together, and shared moments that made headlines and memories that fans admired from afar. Their bond looked unshakable, the kind of friendship people believed in. But behind the laughter, behind the late nights and private moments away from the spotlight, something else was quietly unfolding. Dean Martin was carrying a secret. It wasn't a simple disagreement or a fading connection. It was something deeper, something that cut into trust itself. A betrayal that didn't just hurt in the moment, but lingered, reshaping how he saw a man the world believed was like a brother to him. And for decades, he said nothing. Not during interviews, not at the height of their fame, not even when time had softened so many other wounds. He kept it buried, locked away, as if speaking it aloud might make it too real to bear, until the very end. Because what Dean finally revealed wasn't just about John Wayne. It was about the cost of loyalty, the quiet weight of unresolved pain, and the complicated truth that sometimes the people we trust the most can leave the deepest scars.
I wouldn't change one thing. Not one thing.
And to truly understand how something so strong could become so fractured, you have to go back to where it all began. Because when Dean Martin and John Wayne first met in 1958 on the set of Rio Bravo, something unexpected happened. Something no one, not even director Howard Hawks, could have predicted. Hawks later watched with quiet amazement as two men from completely different worlds connected almost instantly. On the surface, they had little in common. Dean Martin had come from humble beginnings in Steubenville, Ohio, the son of an Italian immigrant barber. Long before fame found him, he fought his way through life, literally and figuratively. He boxed for money, dealt cards in underground gambling rooms, and sang in dimly lit clubs just to make ends meet. Nothing about his rise was guaranteed, yet he carried it all with an effortless ease that made it seem like it was. John Wayne's path couldn't have been more different. Born Marion Morrison in Iowa, he didn't stumble into greatness. He built it piece by piece. Every gesture, every word, every look was carefully shaped over years until the persona of the Duke became something larger than reality. He wasn't just an actor. He was an image, a symbol, a presence people believed in. By all logic, these two shouldn't have clicked. Dean moved through life like nothing could touch him. Smooth, relaxed, always one step ahead without appearing to try.
Before that, he'd made a lot of musical junk, you know, kissing girls, guys leaping all over, singing and dancing, fancy costumes, you know, that red silk handkerchief.
Wayne, on the other hand, was methodical and disciplined, a man who believed in structure, effort, and control. Yet somehow on that dusty Arizona set, those differences didn't divide them. They pulled them together. It started simply. Poker games after long days of filming. While the rest of the crew turned in for the night, Dean and Wayne stayed up sitting across from each other in Wayne's trailer. Cards spread across the table, bourbon in their glasses, cigarette smoke drifting lazily through the air as conversations stretched deep into the night. Wayne began calling him Dino, a nickname rough around the edges but filled with genuine affection. Dean called him Duke, like everyone else. But there was something different in the way he said it, something earned. And just like that, a bond formed. Soon their friendship moved beyond the set. Sundays became tradition. Dinners at Wayne's home in Newport Beach, where their families blended naturally. Their children played together by the ocean, while the adults lingered in conversation long after the sun disappeared. Dean's wife, Jean, grew close to Wayne's wife, Pilar, and what started as a working relationship began to look like something deeper, something lasting. From the outside, it was perfect.
Thank you very, very much. I don't know what for, but it was my pleasure to give that to John, Duke, rather. Oh, for the Cecil B. DeMille Award, that's what it is.
Hollywood couldn't get enough of it. Two icons, no rivalry, no ego battles, just genuine connection. It felt rare, almost too good to be true. Their routine grew into something almost sacred. Weekly dinners at Chasen's restaurant, always the same booth tucked into the back. Dean would arrive first, as usual, bourbon in hand, cigarette lit, waiting in his calm, unbothered way. Wayne would walk in right on time because he was never late, order a scotch, and settle into his seat. And that's where things shifted. Because those conversations weren't just surface level. They went deeper than most people ever saw from Dean Martin. He talked about his marriage, his fears of aging in an industry obsessed with youth, the quiet pressure of staying relevant as the spotlight slowly moved on. These weren't things he shared lightly, not with the public, not even with his closest circle like Frank Sinatra or Sammy Davis Jr. But with Wayne, something felt different. Dean let his guard down, and for a man who built his entire image on not caring, that meant more than anyone realized. I wouldn't change one thing, not one thing. That's what Dean Martin always told the world. But behind the easy smile, the perfectly timed jokes, and that signature laid-back charm, there was something far more complicated hiding underneath. Because the truth is, Dean Martin was lonely. The carefree drinker everyone adored wasn't entirely real. It was a persona carefully built over time, a shield that kept people at a distance. It made life look effortless, untouchable, but it also made it hard for anyone to truly know him. Except for a while, John Wayne seemed to be the exception. With Wayne, Dean believed he could finally let that guard down. By 1962, when they reunited for the Sons of Katie Elder, their friendship had settled into something comfortable, almost automatic. On set, everything felt natural. There was no tension, no forced chemistry, just two men who understood how to move around each other. Dean would occasionally forget his lines, sometimes on purpose just to keep things loose, and Wayne would instantly adapt, jumping into improvisation without missing a beat. Their back and forth felt alive, unscripted, real. Audiences loved it, critics praised it. Together they became something bigger than just co-stars. In the early 1960s, America was searching for certainty, figures who represented strength in a world that felt like it was shifting too fast. And somehow, Dean Martin and John Wayne became that image. They embodied loyalty, masculinity, and brotherhood in its simplest, most idealized form. But even during those golden years, something subtle was beginning to change. Not dramatic arguments, not explosive conflicts, Just small moments. A comment that lingered a little too long, a look that didn't quite sit right. The way Wayne would occasionally correct Dean in front of others, brushing it off with a laugh, but still asserting control. Wayne was used to being the strongest presence in any room. He liked certainty. He liked authority. He liked being right. Dean, as always, played it off. He had mastered the art of making nothing seem important. But the people closest to him started noticing. Sammy Davis Jr. and Joey Bishop both saw it from time to time, a flicker in Dean's expression when Wayne said something just a little too sharp, a tightening of the jaw before that familiar smile slipped back into place. Moments most people missed, but they were there. And then, in 1964, one of those moments became something more, something that wouldn't fade. It happened during a quiet evening at Wayne's Newport Beach home. The sun was setting over the Pacific, painting the sky in deep shades of orange and gold. Inside, the usual laughter and conversation filled the house, but outside on the deck, things were different. That's where Dean's son, Dean Paul Martin, known to everyone as Dino, found himself alone with Wayne. Dino was just 15. By all accounts, he was a good kid. Respectful, thoughtful, trying to figure out who he was while growing up in the shadow of a legendary father. But what truly excited him had nothing to do with fame. It was flying. He spent hours at Santa Monica Airport watching planes take off and land, completely fascinated. To him, aviation wasn't about status. It was freedom. It was purpose. It was something real. That evening, standing beside a man he deeply admired, Dino finally opened up about that dream. His voice carried a mix of excitement and nerves as he talked about becoming a pilot, about the sky, about the life he imagined above everything else. Wayne listened at first, quietly, patiently. He let the boy finish, and then he spoke. "Flying's fine, kid," he said, "but you know what real men do? They fight, they face things head on." There was a pause. Then came the line that cut deeper than Dino could have expected. "They don't sing and dance like your old man." Another pause. "Your father, he's soft, built a whole career out of being soft. You don't want to end up like that." Dino froze. At 15 years old, those words didn't just come from an adult. They came from John Wayne, a man every American kid recognized, a man who stood for strength, for certainty, for everything boys were told to become. So Dean Paul Martin simply nodded, mumbled something polite, and quietly walked back inside. But the words didn't leave him. They stayed, echoing long after the sun had set. He didn't tell his father right away. Maybe he didn't know how. Maybe he didn't want to be the one to break something that seemed so solid. But eventually the truth found its way out, to his mother, Jeanne. And when Dean Martin's wife heard what had been said, she was furious. Jeanne had watched John Wayne for years. She had seen the subtle patterns, the way he sometimes spoke over Dean, the way he carried himself as the dominant voice in any room, the quiet way he positioned himself as stronger, more certain, more right. But this crossed a line. When she confronted Dean, something rare happened. He didn't laugh it off. He didn't pour a drink and brush it aside with a joke. He went quiet. "He called me soft?" Dean asked, his voice low, almost disbelieving. "He told our son that?" Jeanne didn't hesitate. "You need to say something to him." And for once, Dean agreed. He decided he would confront Wayne. Not someday, soon. The plan was set for the following week at a gathering hosted by Frank Sinatra in Palm Springs. Dean even rehearsed what he would say, something completely unlike him. He wasn't a confrontational man. He avoided tension. But this time felt different. This time, it mattered. But when the night finally came, everything shifted. Wayne was already there. He stood at the bar, a glass of scotch in hand, completely at ease. When he saw Dean across the room, his face lit up with that familiar, confident smile. "Dino, he called out warmly, walking straight toward him. In his hands, unexpectedly, was a bouquet of white roses. "For Jean," Wayne said casually. "Heard she's been under the weather." She hadn't been. Whether it was a misunderstanding or something more calculated, no one could say. But the effect was immediate. It disarmed everything. That was one of John Wayne's greatest strengths. He understood presence. He knew how to control a room, how to shape a moment. And in that instant, standing there with flowers in his hands and a smile on his face, confrontation became almost impossible. Because how do you accuse someone when they're being kind right in front of you? So Dean did what he had always done. He played along, he smiled, accepted the roses, made a quick joke about Wayne trying to win over his wife. And just like that, the moment passed. The conversation never happened. Instead, Dean turned, ordered a bourbon, and slipped back into the role everyone expected him to play. But something inside him had changed, and people noticed. Sammy Davis Jr., who was there that night, later remembered the shift. Dean wasn't the same. He drank faster. The usual looseness that came with his charm had sharpened, like there was something underneath he couldn't quite bury, something unresolved. From that point on, Dean stopped reacting and started remembering. Every comment Wayne made about real men, every time he took control of a conversation, whether it was about politics, family, or anything else. Every moment where he subtly positioned himself as the authority. Dean didn't argue. He kept score. And in private, according to Joey Bishop, Dean began using a nickname when he referred to Wayne. The expert. It sounded like a joke, but it wasn't, because whenever Dean said it, there was something underneath, a quiet bitterness wrapped in humor. Better ask the expert, he'd say, taking a slow sip of bourbon, a thin smile crossing his face. To most people, it sounded like harmless sarcasm, just Dean being Dean, cool, detached, never taking anything too seriously. But the people closest to Dean Martin could hear it, the bitterness. It sat quietly beneath the humor, just subtle enough to go unnoticed by the public, but impossible to ignore if you really knew him. Outwardly, nothing had changed between Dean and John Wayne. They still appeared together from time to time. They still shared dinners at Chasen's. They still smiled when cameras were pointed in their direction. To Hollywood, their bond remained legendary, unchanged, unshakable. But behind the scenes, it was different. Dean's inner circle saw it clearly, the way his expression would tighten ever so slightly when Wayne's name came up, the way he would redirect conversations or quietly excuse himself from gatherings if he knew Wayne would be there. The warmth was gone. And then, in 1967, something happened that pushed everything past the point of repair. This time, it wasn't just about them. It was about family. Dean Paul Martin, Dino, was now 18 when trouble found him. One night in Beverly Hills, police raided a party and discovered marijuana. Dino was among those detained. Today, it might barely raise eyebrows. But in 1967, in a conservative Hollywood still obsessed with image and reputation, it was explosive, especially when the name attached to it was Martin. Dean got the call at 3 a.m. His son had been taken into custody. The press didn't know yet, but they would. They always did. And in that moment, the man the world knew disappeared. No more effortless charm, no more cool detachment, just a father. Worried, focused, desperate to protect his son from something that could spiral out of control. Dean started making calls immediately. That was how things worked in Hollywood. Quiet influence, favors exchanged, problems handled before they became headlines. He called his lawyer, and then he made one more call. John Wayne, because despite everything, the tension, the comments, the growing distance, Dean still believed that when it truly mattered, Wayne would be there. The phone rang at Wayne's home in Newport Beach. He answered. Dean quickly explained everything: the party, the arrest, the risk of the story breaking wide open. He didn't ask for miracles, just help, containment. a way to keep his son from being crushed by the machine of public scrutiny. There was a pause, a long one. Then Wayne spoke. "Dean, the kid needs to learn the hard way." Dean felt something sink in his chest. "This is what happens when fathers are too permissive," Wayne continued. "You can't protect them from everything." Dean tried to steady himself. "John, this is my son," he said quietly. "This could ruin his life." But Wayne didn't soften. If anything, his voice became more rigid, more certain. "Character is built through consequences. You've sheltered those kids too much. Hollywood spoils them. This might be the best thing that could happen to him." Dean didn't argue. He couldn't. He just listened, and then slowly hung up the phone, stunned. Because in that moment, it wasn't just disagreement, it was something deeper. A line had been crossed, but what came next would make everything even worse. Because John Wayne didn't just refuse to help. He contacted Hedda Hopper, the most feared voice in Hollywood media at the time. A single column from Hopper could reshape reputations overnight, turning whispers into headlines and private mistakes into public judgment. And this time, that's exactly what happened. John Wayne gave her a quote, anonymous at first, but unmistakable to those who knew how Hollywood worked. "Some Hollywood fathers are too permissive with their children," the column read. "They forget that being a parent means setting boundaries and teaching consequences. When you're too busy being a friend to your kids, you failed them as a father." That was all it took. The story exploded. What started as a quiet incident involving Dean Paul Martin quickly spiraled into national headlines. Newspapers, magazines, gossip columns, they all picked it up, repeating the same narrative again and again. Dean Martin's son, a drug scandal, a reflection of poor parenting, and woven into nearly every version of the story was the same implication that Dean Martin himself was to blame. Too permissive, too distracted, too soft. For Dino, the humiliation cut deep. The legal issue didn't last long. Charges were reduced, and within months, the public had moved on, just like it always did. But inside the Martin family, nothing moved on. Dino carried the weight of feeling like he had let his father down. Dean carried something heavier, the realization that he hadn't been able to protect his son when it mattered most. And both of them understood the same thing. John Wayne hadn't just stepped back, he had made it worse. 2 weeks later, everything came to a breaking point. At a crowded Hollywood party filled with actors, producers, and insiders, Jean Martin finally confronted Wayne face to face. Witnesses later said her hands were shaking, her voice cutting through the room with a sharpness no one had ever heard from her before. "You betrayed us," she said. "When we needed you, you made it worse. What kind of friend does that?" The room went silent. Jean was known for her composure, for grace under pressure. Seeing her like this shocked everyone. But Wayne didn't back down. "I told the truth," he replied calmly. "Sometimes friends have to say hard truths. It only made things worse." Before the confrontation could escalate further, Frank Sinatra stepped in. He physically placed himself between them, diffusing the moment before it turned into something far more public and far more damaging. But the damage had already been done. Later that night, Sinatra went to Dean's house. He found him alone, sitting in the den, surrounded by empty bourbon bottles. And for the first time in all the years he had known him, Dean Martin was crying. Sinatra had seen Dean through everything, divorce, career struggles, the chaos of fame, but never like this, never this broken. "He went after my kid," Dean said quietly. "My kid." Frank sat across from him, stunned by the weight behind those words. "And he did it on purpose," Dean continued, his voice low but steady. "He wanted to hurt me through my son." "Why?" Sinatra asked. "Why would he do that?" Dean looked up, his eyes red, filled with something deeper than anger. "Because he never saw me as an equal," he said. To him, I'm just the entertainer, the soft one, the guy who sings and jokes. He shook his head slowly. He wanted to remind me where I stand. Sinatra tried to fix it. Over the next few months, he attempted to arrange a private meeting between the two men, hoping that time and distance might soften things, that maybe they could clear the air. But Dean refused. He wouldn't take Wayne's calls. He avoided every place Wayne might appear. If he heard Wayne would be somewhere, he simply didn't show up. Privately, the friendship was over. Completely. But Hollywood has a way of pulling people back into the same room, whether they want it or not. A charity event, a tribute to Howard Hawks. Industry gatherings where avoiding each other would only fuel more gossip than simply standing side by side. So they did what professionals do. They performed. Dean Martin smiled. John Wayne smiled. They shook hands when cameras were near. They gave interviews filled with praise, talking about their long history as if nothing had changed. To the public, their bond remained untouched. But the people closest to them knew better. Sammy Davis Jr. would later say that after what happened with Dino, Dean never truly trusted Wayne again. They could stand in the same room, exchange words, even laugh, but the warmth was gone. And Dean, above all else, was a performer. If he had to act like everything was fine, he would. He performed friendship the same way he performed being carefree on stage, so convincingly that almost no one could tell the difference, except for two people. Dean knew, and Wayne knew. And in that quiet, unspoken awareness, something darker began to grow. Not the clean break of a friendship ending, but the slow decay of one that had to continue for appearances. For nearly 3 decades, they lived inside that illusion. To the world, it still looked like brotherhood. But behind it, everything had changed. The 1970s brought a different kind of reality for both men. For Dean Martin, the spotlight began to fade. The Rat Pack era slipped into memory, and the energy that once defined his life, those wild Las Vegas nights, the effortless charisma, started to dim. His television show wound down, and he seemed less interested in maintaining the image that had made him famous. He performed less, he appeared less. And those close to him noticed something else. He drank more and slowly began stepping away from the Hollywood scene that had once revolved around him. John Wayne, meanwhile, was facing his own turning point. After surviving cancer in the mid-1960s, he came out of it changed. Stronger in some ways, but also more rigid, more certain that his beliefs were right, more protective than ever of the image he had spent a lifetime building, the ultimate symbol of American strength. Whenever their paths crossed, the performance continued, polite, controlled, carefully measured. But underneath, the resentment had settled into something colder, something permanent. One moment people still whispered about happened at the Academy Awards in 1972. Wayne was presenting that night. Dean sat in the audience, nominated for a performance in a film that hadn't made a huge impact, but one he was quietly proud of. He didn't win, but that wasn't what people remembered. During a speech, Wayne thanked what he called his real friends. In Hollywood, words like that weren't accidental. The emphasis on real was subtle, but to those who understood the tension between the two men, it landed hard. For just a brief second, the cameras cut to Dean. His face changed, not dramatically, just enough. The smile faded, replaced by something colder. Then, almost instantly, it returned. The applause continued. The moment passed like nothing had happened, but it had. Backstage later, Dean reportedly turned to Joey Bishop and muttered quietly, "Well, I'm glad he knows the difference between real friends and whatever we are." It was said like a joke, but it wasn't. 3 years later came another moment, one that insiders still talk about. The Polo Lounge incident of 1975. Both men happened to be at the Beverly Hills Hotel that afternoon. Same place, same room, and this time, there would be no cameras to hide behind. Dean was having lunch. John Wayne was at the bar. And somehow, inevitably, their paths crossed. At first, it was polite, controlled, the same careful performance they had perfected over the years. A few exchanged words, a nod here, a measured smile there. But then the conversation drifted toward something neither of them could avoid. Politics, Vietnam. Wayne spoke the way he always did, firm, passionate, unwavering. He talked about strength, about duty, about standing behind the country no matter what. His voice carried across the room with the same authority that had defined his entire public image. But this time, Dean Martin didn't just listen. Something in him had shifted. "You talk about strength," Dean said quietly, his tone calm, but edged with something sharper than anyone had ever heard from him in public. "But you've never actually fought in a war, Duke." The words landed hard. "None of us have," Dean continued. "We just played soldiers in movies." The room went still. Conversation stopped. Silverware paused midair. People at nearby tables turned, sensing something was unfolding that wasn't meant for an audience, but couldn't be ignored. Wayne's expression darkened. "I served my country in my own way," he replied, his voice steady but tight, "by making films that supported it." "Propaganda films?" Dean asked. That did it. Wayne stiffened, his posture tightening as the tension snapped into place. "At least I stand for something," he shot back. "I don't stumble around drunk pretending not to care about anything." Dean smiled, slow, controlled, dangerous. "At least I don't lecture people while being a fraud." Now they were standing inches apart. Wayne's fists clenched at his sides. Dean swayed slightly. Whether from bourbon or adrenaline, no one could tell. The air felt heavy, like something was about to break. Hotel security started moving in, and then, unexpectedly, someone stepped between them. Jack Nicholson. "Gentlemen," he said calmly, placing himself squarely between the two men, "let's not do this here." For a moment, no one moved. Then the tension snapped. Wayne turned and walked out one way. Dean went the other. No punches, no shouting, no spectacle. But everyone who witnessed those 30 seconds understood something undeniable. The myth was over. The friendship people had believed in for decades had finally cracked open. And what was left behind wasn't brotherhood. It was resentment. Then, in 1978, another moment reopened everything. Dean Paul Martin, Dino, was now 29. He had joined the Air National Guard and become a skilled pilot, fully embracing the passion he had carried since he was a teenager watching planes at Santa Monica Airport. Flying had become his identity, something separate, something his own. But when news of his service reached the media, Wayne made another comment, one that quickly spread. "Finally, a real Martin is emerging," he reportedly said. "Good to see the boy found his backbone." The implication was unmistakable. It wasn't just praise for Dino. It was a criticism of his father. Again. Dean read the quote in the Los Angeles Times one morning over breakfast. Jean sat across from him, watching quietly. She had learned to read him without words, the small changes, the subtle shifts that revealed everything he didn't say out loud. Dean finished the article, then slowly folded the paper. "He even tries to own my children," he said, his voice quiet but heavy. "He can't just let Dino have this moment. He has to make it about me, about what I am." Jean leaned forward. "Then say something," she urged. "Tell people who he really is." But Dean just shook his head. "What's the point?" he said. "America loves John Wayne." He paused, staring down at the table. "They'd never believe me." There was no anger in his voice, just exhaustion. "And honestly," he added softly, "I'm too tired to fight anymore." That was the truth of his later years. Not bitterness, not rage, just weariness. He was tired of pretending. tired of performing a friendship that had died long ago, tired of swallowing his pride every time Wayne publicly positioned himself as the stronger man, the real man. The drinking that had once been part of Dean Martin's stage persona slowly became something else, not a performance, a coping mechanism. What once looked effortless, glass in hand, smile on his face, started to carry weight. It became a way to quiet the frustration he never voiced, to soften the anger he no longer had the energy to confront. By the late 1970s, he and John Wayne barely spoke. If they crossed paths, it was polite. A nod, a brief exchange, then distance again. To outsiders, it still looked like respect between two aging legends. But the truth was simpler. The friendship was gone. Then, in May of 1979, everything changed. Dean got a phone call. John Wayne was dying. The cancer had returned, and this time it wasn't something he would survive. Wayne wanted to see him. At first, Dean refused. He told Frank Sinatra he wasn't going, told Sammy Davis Jr. the same thing, but they didn't let it go. "You'll regret it if you don't," they told him. "Whatever happened, this is the right thing to do." Reluctantly, Dean gave in. He drove to UCLA Medical Center and walked into John Wayne's private hospital room, into a moment neither of them could avoid anymore. Inside, everything felt different. Dean had hoped, quietly, maybe even against his better judgment, that this meeting might bring some kind of closure, that facing the end, Wayne might finally acknowledge what had happened between them, the years of tension, the things left unsaid. But that's not what he got. The room was filled with flowers, telegrams, messages stacked everywhere, from presidents, actors, admirers across the world. A lifetime of fame surrounding a man who knew his time was running out. When Dean entered, Wayne asked everyone else to leave. And just like that, it was only them, the cowboy and the crooner. Two men in their 70s, both carrying decades of history into a single quiet room. Wayne looked different, weaker, thinner. The illness had stripped away the physical strength people associated with him, but his eyes, they hadn't changed. Still sharp, still focused. "Thanks for coming, Dino," Wayne said, his voice fragile but steady. Dean nodded and sat beside the bed. He didn't speak. "I know we've had our disagreements over the years," Wayne continued. "Things got said, feelings got hurt. But that happens with real friendships, right? You fight, you make up, you move on." Dean stared at him. Disagreements. That was the word Wayne chose. Not betrayal, not resentment, not pain, just disagreements. "I'm sorry," Wayne added, "for whatever I did that upset you, any misunderstandings." Misunderstandings. For a brief second, Dean almost laughed. The word felt so disconnected from reality that it bordered on absurd, but he stayed quiet because he knew Wayne wasn't finished. "I need to ask you something," Wayne said. There was a shift in his tone, subtle but familiar. Dean had heard it before. The tone of a man about to make a request, not a confession. "When I'm gone," Wayne continued softly, "and it won't be long now, I want you to speak at my funeral." Dean felt something settle in his chest, cold, heavy. "The world needs to see us together one last time," Wayne went on. "They need to know the friendship was real, that despite everything, we were brothers." He looked directly at Dean. "You understand what I'm asking, don't you?" Dean understood perfectly. Even now, lying in a hospital bed, facing the end, John Wayne was still thinking about the story, about the image, about how everything would be remembered. He wasn't asking for reconciliation. He was asking for a performance. "Give them the Dean Martin they expect," Wayne said. "The charming one. The one who loved his friend, Duke." He paused, then gave a faint smile. "Make me look good, Dino." And there it was. The final request. Not for forgiveness, not for truth, for legacy. Dean could have refused. He could have said everything he had held back for years. could have told Wayne exactly what he thought about the betrayal, the humiliation, the way he had been diminished over and over again. He could have ended it honestly, right there, after decades of silence, but he didn't. Because sometimes the hardest thing isn't speaking the truth. It's deciding whether anyone would ever believe it. He could have walked out of that hospital room and left everything unfinished. No closure, no performance, no final act, but Dean Martin didn't. Maybe it was the Catholic guilt he had carried since childhood. Maybe it was the quiet, unspoken rules of Hollywood, where image often mattered more than truth. Or maybe he was just too tired to keep fighting a battle that had already taken so much out of him. After a long silence, he gave a small nod. "I'll do it," he said. Across the room, John Wayne smiled weakly. "I knew I could count on you." Dean didn't respond. He left the hospital, got into his car, and drove straight to a bar. And he stayed there for hours, alone, drinking, until eventually Frank Sinatra found him. Frank slid onto the stool beside him, taking a moment to study his friend's face, the exhaustion, the weight of something unspoken. "How was it?" he asked quietly. Dean took a slow sip of bourbon before answering. He apologized, he said, for misunderstandings. The word tasted bitter. 30 years, Dean continued. 30 years of everything, and that's what he calls it. Frank exhaled softly. He already knew what came next. "And he asked you to speak at the funeral." Dean didn't look at him. "You said yes." It wasn't a question. Dean nodded. "I said yes." He stared into his glass, the reflection trembling slightly in the dim light. "I'm going to stand up there and tell everyone what a great friend he was, what a great man he was." A pause, long, heavy. "I'm going to lie for him one last time." On June 11th, 1979, John Wayne died. His funeral became a major public event filled with Hollywood royalty, political figures, lifelong admirers. The man who had defined the American Western was being remembered exactly the way the world expected. And when the time came, Dean Martin stepped forward. He delivered the eulogy, warm, emotional, effortless. He spoke of loyalty, of strength, of friendship that had lasted decades. He told stories, late-night poker games, shared dinners, moments of laughter that painted a picture of two men who had truly understood each other. People were moved. Some were in tears. Those who knew Dean later said it may have been the greatest performance of his entire life, because the warmth in his voice felt completely real, and not a single word of it was true. After the service ended, Sammy Davis Jr. found him sitting alone in his car. Dean's hands were shaking. "I just buried a stranger," he said quietly. Sammy stared at him, trying to process the weight of those words. "I stood up there and praised a man I truly hated," Dean continued. "And I did it so well, everyone believed me." "Then why did you do it?" Sammy asked. Dean didn't answer right away. He just looked out through the windshield, his expression distant, empty. "Because that's what we do in Hollywood," he said finally. "We perform, even when it kills us." But the full truth, the one he carried quietly for years, didn't come out that day. It stayed buried for 16 more years, until Christmas Day, 1995. By then, Dean Martin was 78. Years of smoking and drinking had taken their toll. His body was failing, emphysema, kidney failure, slowly shutting him down. The man who once filled rooms with laughter now lay in silence, drifting in and out of clarity. Beside him sat his daughter, Deanna. And in one of those brief, fragile moments of awareness, Dean spoke. "Your brother," he whispered. She leaned closer. "Your brother died trying to prove he was man enough for John Wayne's approval." The words hung in the air, heavy, unavoidable. Dean Paul Martin, Dino, had died in 1987 in a plane crash while serving as a pilot in the Air National Guard. Flying had been his dream, his identity, the one thing that was truly his, and the one thing John Wayne had once praised. Dean had carried that connection, that thought, for 8 years. "I spent 50 years doing the same thing," Dean Martin whispered softly. "Trying to prove I was man enough, trying to measure up to John's idea of what a man should be." Tears filled his eyes. "We both failed, baby, both of us." Beside him, his daughter Dina squeezed his hand, listening as the man the world knew as effortless and untouchable finally spoke without any mask at all. "Because John never saw anyone as enough." He paused, his breathing growing shallow. "The person I truly hated wasn't John Wayne." His voice was barely more than a whisper now, but every word landed with quiet clarity. "It was myself." Deanna leaned closer, holding on to every syllable. "I hated myself for needing his approval," Dean continued, "for swallowing my pride, for standing up there and delivering that eulogy, for letting him define what it meant to be a man." That was the truth he had carried for decades. And it changed everything. Because to the world, Dean Martin represented something completely different from John Wayne. Where Wayne stood for rigid strength, authority, and a hardened definition of masculinity, Dean offered the opposite. He made life look lighter. He made vulnerability feel human. He showed people that you didn't have to take everything so seriously to be strong. That charm, humor, and imperfection weren't weaknesses. They were part of what made someone real. In his own way, Dean redefined masculinity. He made it cool not to care. But in private, he had betrayed that very idea, because behind the persona, behind the laughter and the easygoing confidence, he had spent years chasing the approval of the exact kind of man his public image quietly pushed against. And by the time he realized it, the damage had already been done. "I forgive him," Dean whispered, his voice fading. "I forgive John." A long pause followed. "But I'll never forgive myself for not walking away sooner." His grip weakened slightly in Deanna's hand. "For not protecting Dino better, for caring what John Wayne thought of me when I should have known better." Those were some of the last clear words he ever spoke. Later that day, Christmas Day, 1995, Dean Martin passed away at the age of 78. Surrounded by family, the weight he had carried for so long finally slipped away with him. What remained was the truth. A quiet confession that his daughter would eventually share with the world. And in the end, this story isn't really about two Hollywood legends. It's about something far more human. It's about what happens when we lose ourselves trying to live up to someone else's expectations. When we let stronger personalities, whether they're famous, powerful, or simply louder, define our worth. Dean Martin spent his career showing people that life didn't have to be so heavy. That laughter could be strength. That vulnerability could be power. But in his personal life, he forgot his own lesson. And maybe that's the real tragedy. Because by the time he understood that John Wayne's approval had never truly mattered, it was too late. His son, Dean Paul Martin, was gone. The friendship had long since turned into a performance, and what remained in the end was regret. But maybe there's something to take from it. Maybe it's a reminder to choose your own definition of who you are, to not measure your worth by someone else's standards, to walk away when something no longer aligns with who you truly are, because no approval is worth losing yourself. If this story stayed with you, take a moment to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more untold stories from Hollywood's golden era. And I'll see you in the next video.